Okay, hey y'all. I'm going to cut to the chase. I'm going to dig into some word, but I'm going to give you a quick little backstory. So I entitled this called sorry, I'm like totally shaking the table. It's not an earthquake. It's just me being clumsy. I entitled this called A Promise is a Promise because a lot of times in our life, what happens is God gives us a promise, okay? And then there's a period of preparation before that promise kind of comes to pass. And sometimes it's like we get spiritual amnesia. We forget about the promise. But the Bible says that God is not a man that he should lie, right? So I wanted to give you a little bit of a backdrop to the story. So Moses, right? Y'all know that story. They come out of Egypt. They're in the wilderness for like 40 years. They are ready to set down their tents, okay? And they're given this land that's called, wait for it, right? The promised land. Okay. So this is the land of Canaan. Okay. This is like Canaan. It's filled with, it says it's a land that flows with milk and honey. Okay. So this is just to tell you, this is a desirable land. Okay. So I'm going to jump to the beginning of Joshua because remember, Moses did not get to do this. Moses was not going to get to cross over because of his personal disobedience. I just want to talk about some of God's promises as far as your life for just a minute, but I want to give you a little bit of a backdrop so that this makes sense. Okay. So this is actually Joshua 1. I'm sorry, you totally cannot see that. Okay, Joshua 1. Okay, this is in the NIV. This is actually a split version, so I can see the King James Version and NIV. But this is what it says. This is verse 1, chapter 1. It says, after the death of Moses, the servant of the Lord said to Joshua, son of Nun, Moses' aide, Moses, my servant, is dead. Now then, you all people, get ready to cross the Jordan River into the land, okay? So pay attention for a second, into the land that I'm about to give to them, to the Israelites. I will give you every place. So this is important. He's actually laying out what he's going to do, okay? So he says, I will give you every place where you set your foot as I promised Moses. Your territory will extend from the desert to Lebanon, from the great river, the Euphrates, all the Hittite country, and the Mediterranean Sea to the west. No one will be able to stand against you all the days of your life. As I was with Moses, so I will be with you. I will never leave you nor forsake you. Be strong and courageous because you will lead these people to inherit, okay, that's another good word, to inherit. And I just totally lost where I was, and that's okay. To inherit the land I swore to their ancestors to give them. And then it keeps going, be strong and courageous, okay? Here's what I want you to see. This was a promise, okay, from the Lord. He can't lie. We can make promises. We can forget about them. We can misplace things. Circumstances can change. But God literally said, every place that you set your foot, I am going to give to you. It says be strong and courageous. So it doesn't say like, hey, y'all, you're going to walk in. Everybody's going to go, oh, they're here. It's their land. Bye. See you later. We just need a few minutes to pack. No, there is a cause to be strong and courageous, which means it's not that this is going to be handed over in the sense of here you go, but it's going to be handed over, meaning nothing can withstand against them. Okay. So it's saying for them not to fear. So now that you understand the backdrop, I want to flash forward to what actually happens. And this is crazy. So this is the promise. Like all of them know this. This is not a secret. This is a promise. This is their land. It has been promised to them for a while, and now they can finally take it. So you would think with the Lord speaking this and saying like, you're not going to be defeated, that they would be like, all right, let's go. Let's get her done, right? Let's go in there. Let's take our land. God says it's ours. We're just doing what the Lord commands, right? Totally not what happens. I know, right? Spoiler alert. So again, they are going to be unfaithful, which is pretty much like this entire book. But before y'all get hard and judgy, just know that pretty much most of our entire lives is basically the same way. It's like one great circle. Like we're doing great, we're disobedient. We're doing great, we're disobedient. We're like, oh, squirrel. Well, at least that's me. I try to stay on track, and then occasionally I kind of veer off. And I'm not saying that it's the worst thing ever, but there are moments of disobedience, and we may not see it as disobedience until we read some of these scriptures. And that's why I want to get into this, because disobedience doesn't necessarily mean that you go out and you do some terrible thing. Disobedience is not walking in the promise that God has given you. Disobedience is not believing God at his word. It's having doubt. It's literally like something I posted on Facebook earlier this week. It's doubting your beliefs and believing your doubt. Okay. So that is actually being disobedient, because you're actually purposely, or maybe not on purpose, but you're moving yourself out of the will of God because you're doubting what he says, as if we somehow know better, or we know something that God does not know. So I'm going to jump ahead. So basically, here's the spoiler alert. They didn't do what they were supposed to do. So I'm basically going to paraphrase this. Otherwise, this would be like chapters and chapters. But basically, it goes through and we go all the way, and we're in Joshua, and now we're in Judges. And in Judges, basically, it says this. So after Judah went down to get the Canaanites living in the hill country of Negev and the western foothills, they advanced to get the Canaanites living in Hebron. And then it goes forward, right? And he starts talking with Caleb and all this other stuff, and fights and battles ensue. And I'm going to spare you all of those details. I would love for y'all to read it yourself. But here we go. So we're going to read the neithers, okay? I'm going to read you the neithers for just a second, all right? Because this is like basically telling on them, like, yeah, and like none of them did it. So it goes through this list. Neither did Manasseh drive out the inhabitants of Beth Shean. And it came to pass when Israel was strong, and they put the Canaanites to tribute. So, but they did not utterly drive them out. So it's literally saying, like, oh, they kept them. They didn't kill them. They didn't drive them out. They just had them work for them. Not exactly what God said to do. In fact, not at all what God said to do. Neither did Ephraim drive out the Canaanites that dwelt in Gezer. Neither did Zebulun. Neither did Asher. Now I'm going to skip ahead because I don't need to go into all the details. You guys get the point. Neither did Naphtali. And the Amorites forced the children of Dan into the mountain. Like, they got it even worse. Like, they not only did they not, they got forced out. Like, God already said that they had the victory, right? But they're acting like they're defeated. So that's what I want to talk to you. I'm going to go for this in one more second. There's one more part I'm going to read in scripture, but when we have defeat in our hearts, we will not reach our destiny. I'm going to say that one more time. When we already have defeat in our hearts, we will not reach our destiny. See, God is true, right? The Bible says, God be true, let every man be a liar, right? Meaning, God is not a man that he can lie. It's impossible for him to lie. But why do things sometimes not happen when they're promised to us? It's easy. It's us. It's us. You know, what we purpose to do in our heart is what we're actually going to do. And sometimes we are defeated before we even began. Now, I could go through all these scriptures and say, well, in our weakness, we're made strong, so it's good that we're weak. But the truth is, God told them not to fear and to be bold, right? That he was going to give them all of these victories. He was going to give them every piece of land that their foot touched. What in your life today, I want y'all to think about this, has God promised you? What thing has he declared or decreed? What has he spoken to your heart that is yours, that you have already declared defeat in your heart? That you've already started thinking thoughts of defeat. That you've already started thinking of the plan B. Well, if this doesn't work, if this fails, if this doesn't pan out the way that I thought it was going to pan out. Are we speaking defeat? Are we thinking defeat? Because the truth is, all Satan really has to do is defeat you in here and in here. See, they had the land. They could have taken it at any point, but they had already decided they were defeated. And defeat stops you from your destiny. So the next part I want to read really quickly, and this is just like the saddest part of the saddest part, and I'm going to wrap up here. And I just have to find it. Disobedience, defeat. These are great headlines here. All right. And here it says, and this is in Judges 2, and this is verse 20. It says, therefore the Lord was very angry with Israel and said, because this nation has violated the covenant I ordained for their ancestors and has not listened to me, I will no longer drive out before them any of the nations that Joshua left when he died. I will use them to test Israel to see whether they will keep the way of the Lord and walk in it as their ancestors did. The Lord had allowed those nations to remain. He did not drive them out at once by giving them into the hands of Joshua. Basically, God says, look, I asked y'all to get rid of them. Okay, and there's many other stories in the Bible like this. I asked you to clean house. I asked you to say, go get your walking shoes and get on out. But they were like, yeah, I don't know. And they're big and they're scary. I mean, the tribe of Dan literally got kind of ousted from their land for a minute until they got some reinforcements. So they were not going in there actually trusting on what the Lord said. They were bringing their own doubt. They were bringing their own stuff. See, we don't ever get a promise because of how good we are. Okay. Let me just be clear. Like, we don't get things from God because we're so good, we're so special, we're so holy, we're so righteous. That's not the way it works. We have jobs that God wants us to do, and we need to be obedient to do what he's asked us to do and leave all of the results up to him. Because all we are responsible for is the obedience part. All we're responsible for is doing what he's asked us to do. But they did not do that. Much like how sometimes we don't do that. He asked them to clear out the land, and he said he was going to empower them to do that. But when they were disobedient, he said, you know what? I'm not going to drive them out. Anybody that you have willingly and knowingly left in this land, it's now yours to deal with. And now we'll see where your heart is. Now we'll see if you are going to start following them and their gods and their practices and their false religions, or if your heart really is for me, if you're really going to follow after my ways, if you're really going to be obedient to what I've called you to do. Spoiler alert, it did not go well. But I want to challenge you today. What in your life has God promised you? Because often we are the very thing that is standing between where we are and where God has called us to be. See, he gave them practical steps. He told them exactly what they needed to do. But what did they do? Their doubt stopped their destiny. So I want to share that with you today. It could be something really, really little, like a crazy faith step that God has told you to start a business, adopt some kids, move, put yourself back out there in the dating world, or not date at all. I don't know what your destiny is. I don't know what God has specifically called you to do. Maybe it's intercessory prayer. Maybe it's to serve in the homeless community. Maybe it's to start offering to do grocery shopping. I heard this wonderful service. A lady in Wilmington actually helps people that are elderly and that are widows and different things like that with meals and grocery shopping, and something God put on her heart to do. If we all did the thing that God told us to do, like, it's covered. Like, it's totally covered. God does not call each and every one of us to do each and everything. Okay. Paul was clear about that. He had a very specific message and thing that he was called to do. He had a destiny. He had a purpose, and he was clear. So he realized that serving the orphans and widows and waiting these tables was a very awesome, wonderful thing and a great responsibility, but it wasn't his call. So he was able to get elders, Stephen being one of them, who was a deacon, to come and actually do that position. So there is something right now in your life, and it may seem intangible or untangible. I can't even talk today. It's English. But anyway, it may be something that's like so far out of reach, and you're like, I do not know, God, how I'm going to get to that spot. Well, guess what? The good news is you don't have to know. You don't. All you have to do is take one step in obedience and then another one in obedience. God is going to connect all of those dots. I promise you, if he has called you to it, he is going to bring you through it. Do not let your doubts, stop your destiny, because he's got a plan and a purpose for you, and he has called you to it. And a lot of times we hesitate, or we do part of it, but we don't do the whole thing. Say, surely he doesn't want me to sell everything I have and move. So I'm going to make preparations. I'm just going to keep all my stuff in the attic and rent my house out, right? Or surely he doesn't really mean for me to do this or to do that. I don't know what it is in your life, but I know that God does not call us to do things we can do on our own, my friend. He calls us to do things that he is empowering us to do. We don't need to figure it out. We just need to be obedient. And on the flip side, when they weren't obedient, it was nothing but chaos. It wasn't. It was a total, complete train wreck. And you got to read through this in order to really grasp that. It's way too long for this video. But let's just say it did not go well. They could have chosen a way easier route, which in the beginning would have seemed really harder, scary, maybe even terrifying. But God gave them a promise. Their problem was they didn't believe the promise. So I'm encouraging y'all today, whatever it is that God has laid on your heart, whatever promise he has spoken into your spirit, it may seem like it's not going to happen. It may seem totally unrealistic. But if God promised you it, it's going to come to pass. Don't let your doubt stop your destiny. I hope y'all have a wonderful Tuesday and a blessed evening. Bye.